As a man who writes romance novels, I've personally written my own, most melodramatic ending. My readers all thought my ex would disrupt my wedding, that I'd chase after her and demand to know why she'd come. But I only gave her a single glance before turning back to finish my vows, sliding the ring firmly onto my bride's finger and kissing the woman beside me. In that moment, all I could think of was the hospital room 10 years ago on a rainy night where my calls went unanswered. Ava left her regrets to the ocean, while I gave my tenderness to the one who truly cherished me. Some love, once it's subjected to comparison, has already lost completely. On our anniversary, my girlfriend, Ava, posted on her Facebook saying how time flies, that it had already been 9 years. I liked the post, but it was deleted almost instantly. Later, I happened to glance at her phone screen and saw a comment under that now-deleted post. "It's been 9 years, and you still haven't forgotten him?" I casually tapped on the commenter's profile picture. The man in the photo bore a striking resemblance to me. It turned out the 9th year she mentioned wasn't commemorating me at all, but her first love, Marco, the one she could never let go of. I chose to leave quietly after that day. It wasn't until years later, on the eve of my wedding, that I heard from a mutual friend that Ava had spent the last decade searching for me like a woman possessed. It was our 9th anniversary. Following our tradition, I had booked a table at our favorite restaurant in Chicago, brought roses, and bought her a beautiful, expensive necklace. Halfway through dinner, her phone rang. She rushed outside to take the call. When she returned, she was frowning. "Something urgent came up at work," she said. "I have to go back right now." And with that, she hurried away. I was left alone, staring at the steak, pasta, and dessert. Not wanting the food to go to waste, I called my friend Ethan and asked him to join me. Seeing the look on my face, Ethan patted my shoulder. "Don't overthink it, man," he said. "Ava just made regional general manager at Dakin Corporation. It's normal for her to be swamped. Besides, look, no matter how busy she is, she still remembered to post about your 9th anniversary on Facebook." I picked up my phone and saw it. A post from Ava, made just 3 minutes ago. "Time flies," it read. "It's already the 9th year." A warmth spread through my chest. I hit the like button and was about to type a comment. Where did this picture come from? I didn't remember ever taking one like it. The thought had barely formed in my mind when the post vanished. Ethan looked confused. "When did you take this picture? It kind of looks like you, but something's weird about it. I can't quite place it." He handed me his phone, showing me a screenshot he'd taken of Ava's post. At first glance, the man in the photo did look like me, but a closer look revealed it wasn't. The man in the photo had a softness, a vulnerability in his eyes. My eyes, on the other hand, have always been described as sharp and resolute. It's a look forged from a decade of clawing my way up the corporate ladder, a relentless drive that propelled my career forward. I zoomed in on the picture and saw it, a small rose tattooed on his right index finger. I instinctively glanced down at my own hand. It was bare. A cold dread washed over me. I had Ethan send me the screenshot, saved it, and immediately called Ava. The phone rang and rang, but she didn't pick up. I tried again. Same result. Seeing the tension in my face, Ethan helped me to my feet. "Come on," he said. "I'll drive you home." The rain was coming down hard on the drive, hammering against the windshield. Back at my apartment, I sat on the sofa, listening to the storm outside and staring at the screenshot on my phone. The man wasn't me, but the resemblance was uncanny. Or maybe it was I who resembled him. Just as I was about to try calling Ava again, the front door burst open. She stumbled inside, drenched from the rain. "You're back?" I asked, my voice deliberately casual. I was sitting on the sofa in the pitch-black living room, my fingers aching from how tightly I was gripping my phone. I did my best to keep my tone level. 1,000 questions were burning through my mind, but I didn't want to seem irrational, at least not until I knew the truth. Ava just mumbled a vague, "Mitchum," and disappeared into the bathroom. A moment later, I heard the shower running. For the first time in our relationship, I picked up her phone. I opened her Facebook app. The post was still there. She had simply blocked me from seeing it. Beneath the post were comments from her friends. "Oh my God, is Marco back? Haha, did you block your boyfriend from seeing this?" No way, Ava. You still haven't forgotten him after 9 years. And under that last comment, Ava had replied with a single word. Yes. That single word. It crashed down on my heart like a 1,000-pound boulder, shattering it completely. I felt like a fool, an absolute idiot. I'd lived for 30 years, priding myself on being straightforward and honest, only to discover that the woman I loved had been using me as a stand-in. Could anything be more pathetic? And were there truly no signs? I remembered how she'd frown whenever I casually ran my fingers through her hair. I never thought much of it, only hearing her say, "Don't mess with my hair, you'll ruin it." I've always preferred black and gray, but she was always pushing me to wear white. "James, you have such a serious personality," she'd say. "Wearing dark colors all the time makes you seem unapproachable. Why would make you look younger, more open?" I'm not the kind of guy who changes himself to please anyone. But when it came to her, I always found myself giving in. Over time, my closet slowly filled with white shirts. I always believed there was nothing wrong with making your partner happy. I have my own preferences, after all. I love it when women wear dresses, and Ava would often change into one after work, sliding on my lap and purring, "James, come over here." Her playful, seductive teasing often kept me awake until dawn. But thinking back on it now, I realize those nights almost always coincided with me wearing a white shirt. I used to think it was just her personal taste. Now I understood. It was a 9-year obsession with another man. A man named Marco. I stared at the man in the photo with my haircut and my white shirt. I never imagined I'd become a character in some cheap melodrama, the stand-in for a long-lost first love. A sharp pain seized my chest, and I clutched it. Just then, the bathroom door clicked open, and Ava emerged. "Who is he?" I asked, holding up my phone with the screenshot displayed. Ava froze for a second. She didn't answer right away. "Let me just get changed," she said. I sat on the sofa, forcing myself to stay calm while I waited. She emerged not in pajamas, but in a fresh dress. She leaned over me, her hands on my shoulders. "James, trust me," she said. "He's just a friend who just got back in the country. He doesn't know anyone, so I went to pick him up." Before I could even respond, she straightened up, adjusted her dress, grabbed an umbrella, and headed for the door. "Ava, I hope you don't regret this," I said, forcing the words through gritted teeth. She hesitated for only a second before twisting the knob and stepping out. The rain was pouring now. I listened to her footsteps disappear down the hallway as my whole body began to tremble. I was wrapped in a thick blanket, wearing sweats, but I was freezing. I grabbed a thermometer. 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It was the first time I realized that when you're hurt that deeply, your body can just give out. My head was swimming, but my first thought was still of her. I sent her a picture of the thermometer and texted, "The rain is awful. I can't get an Uber. You can't have gone far. Can you please come back and take me to the hospital?" She replied almost immediately, "Don't be so dramatic, James. We'll deal with it when I get back." My teeth were chattering. "Ava, I'm not being dramatic." I typed back, "I'm really sick. Please just come back." But my message vanished into the ether, unanswered. I tried the Uber app again and again, but nothing was available. My car was at the dealership for service. And honestly, even if it were here, I was in no condition to drive. I had no choice but to call Ethan. Ethan stayed with me at the emergency room, through registration and getting the force set up. He looked at my pale face and said hesitantly, "Shouldn't we call Ava? I mean, you're still her boyfriend." My lips were white. I just shook my head. "James, are you really going to break up with her?" Ethan pressed. "After 9 years? If you hadn't been supporting her all this time, she'd never be where she is today. So she finally gets some money and power, and she's just going to leave you in the dust." "But why?" Ethan said through his teeth. "Someone should at least teach her a lesson. That's the only fair thing." I just waved a hand, a bitter smile on my face. "You can't wake someone up," I said, "who's only pretending to be asleep." The answer was simple. You can't. And I had no intention of dragging this out. It wasn't my style. My heart felt like it had been ground into dust. I had no fight left in me. I spent 2 days in the hospital. Not a single call or text from Ava. In the end, I was the one to reach out. "Ava, we need to talk." She replied a while later. James, I've been so busy. Marco's not doing well and needs someone with him. I saw Ethan's Facebook post, so I know he's taking care of you, which is a relief. Can you just wait a little longer? Until I get things sorted out here. There was again. Wait. I had asked Ava to marry me in our 4th year together. My parents were eager for us to settle down, and I truly loved her and wanted to build a life with her. And what did she say then? James, my career is just taking off. Can you just wait a little longer? I don't want to hold you back. I was already in middle management, and she was a junior supervisor. I understood her ambition, her desire to prove herself. So I waited another 2 years. In our 6th year, I asked again. Her answer this time? James, I just made it into management. My position isn't secure. If we get married now, they'll say I'm prioritizing family over my career, that it will hinder my progress. It stung, but I loved her. And love makes you willing to compromise. It was only later that I learned the real reason she kept telling me to wait. It was because Marco had once told her to wait for him. He had asked her to wait 10 years. And for the sake of that 10-year pact, she made me wait 9. If she hadn't slipped up and forgotten to block me from that Facebook post, she would have waited out the entire decade for him. If Marco had come back ready to fulfill their pact, she would have left me without a second thought. And if he hadn't, maybe then she would have settled for me. No one knew our entire relationship was just an elaborate performance. But none of that mattered anymore. Back in our apartment, I looked around the home we had shared for 9 years, a place saturated with our memories. I started in the bedroom, packing my clothes. I took all the white shirts and hung them back up. Then I pulled out all my black and gray clothes, folded them, and packed them in my suitcase. When I was done, I looked at the closet. Her dark clothes hung on the left. On the right, a row of her favorite white dresses. I could almost see her standing on the left, with Marco standing on the right. I'm sure it was a scene she had replayed in her own mind 1,000 times. She must have dreamed of a life where her clothes hung on one side of the closet and Marco's on the other. It was just a shame that for the past 9 years, I was the one occupying that space. She must have mentally rehearsed my departure many times. I went into the study next. I've always been more of a reader than Ava. Beside my corporate job, I'm also a writer, so most of the books in there were mine. I ended up with more than a dozen large boxes. After the movers Ethan had called came and took them away, the study looked like it had been ransacked. The built-in shelves were almost completely bare, except for a few romance novels I'd never bothered to read. I picked one up and opened it to the flyleaf. A gift for you, from Marco, the inscription read. Of course. That's why she'd read them until the pages were worn. The edges of the pages were soft and frayed. I could easily picture her fingertips tracing the words, as if she were caressing him through the book. I let out a bitter, self-mocking laugh and carefully put the books back on the shelf. Now, not a single trace of me remained on those shelves. Only Marco. Wasn't this exactly what she had always wanted? Then, I went to the kitchen. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, I was hit by a memory of the love Ava had once shown me. I remembered during the height of the pandemic, when I suggested isolating myself elsewhere, she stopped me. James, we're partners, she'd said. It's my responsibility to take care of you. She insisted I stay in bed while she brought me water, made me soup, and checked my temperature through the night. If I so much as mumbled thirsty in my feverish state, she would be at my side with a glass of water. Here, James, she'd whisper. Drink this. You'll feel better. She wouldn't let me go out for supplies, either. It's too dangerous out there, James, she'd insist. I'll go. I am stronger. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, these memories replaying in my head like an old film. Ethan says I seem calm now, but he doesn't understand. A man's true calm comes only after his heart is dead. And when your heart is dead, there are no tears left to cry. Do you understand that, Ava? I sat there, motionless for the rest of the day, watching the sky outside the window shift from dawn to dusk, the sun giving way to the moon. It was only then that I truly understood. The person I was waiting for was never coming back. Her obsession with her 9-year wait for him was far stronger than her 9 years of settling for me. Goodbye, Ava. I stood, grabbed my suitcase, and walked to the door. On the entryway table, I saw a framed photo of the two of us. I had erased almost every other trace of my existence from that apartment. I decided to leave this one last thing for her. Whether she tore it up or threw it away was her business. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I later accepted an offer from a company in the U.S. and quit my job. Before my flight, I got a call from Sarah in HR of my old firm. "James," she said, "I thought you should know. A Ms. Ava Thompson from Dakin Corporation just called, asking if you were on a business trip. I figured you hadn't told her you'd resigned, so I wanted to check with you first." "Thanks, Sarah," I said. "Just tell her I'm on a business trip. Don't mention that I quit. Don't say anything else." After I hung up, I glanced at my phone. A flood of messages from Ava was coming through. "James, why aren't you answering me? Are you out of the hospital? What is going on? Why won't you talk to me? You can't still be mad, can you? I told you, he's just a friend. Things will go back to normal soon. He's just heartbroken, and he's an old friend from college." "James, you're a corporate executive, for God's sake. Can you not be so petty? Anyway, I just called your office, and Sarah said you were on a business trip. I guess that means you're feeling better, so that's a relief. Have a good trip. We'll talk when you get back. Love you." Reading those messages felt like watching a scene from a past life. Or more accurately, it felt like they were meant for someone else. As if Ava had no idea who she was even talking to. I selected all of them and deleted the entire conversation. Then I powered down my phone and boarded the plane. After landing in San Francisco, I tossed my old phone in a drawer and started using my new company phone. The next few days were a blur of apartment hunting and getting acquainted with my new team and surroundings. I barely stopped. The company had been trying to recruit me for a while, offering a salary that was triple my old one. I turned them down before, thinking that moving to another country with the language and cultural barriers would be too much of an upheaval. But they were persistent, flying out to meet with me multiple times. Now that I was finally here, it felt surprisingly right. For a fleeting moment, I was almost grateful that Ava had chosen her first love over me. Within 3 days, I had my new life more or less in order. It was only then that I found a spare moment to dig the old phone out of the drawer. It was full of photos I couldn't yet bring myself to delete. My plan was to delete everything related to Ava, but keep the photos of myself. I couldn't bring myself to erase those. The moment I powered it on, a deluge of messages from Ava flooded the screen. "James, what is this? Where did all the books in the study go? What happened to your clothes in the closet? Aren't you on a business trip? James, say something. There's nothing going on with Marco. I admit we dated, but that's in the past. You're the only one I care about now. James, when are you coming back? Just give me a sign, just one word, so I know you're okay. Please, please stop being angry. I'm begging you." I clutched the phone, my knuckles white. My parents, who had just arrived, came over and put a hand on my shoulder. The company had arranged for their visas, so they had moved to San Francisco with me. Besides my parents, Ethan was the only one who knew where I was. But he had already blocked Ava on everything and moved to Scandinavia for a new job. I've been too busy since I landed to bother clearing out her messages. But it didn't matter now. I popped out the old SIM card and was about to delete the iMessage app when my thumb slipped and hit the wrong icon. It opened our old home security camera app. My parents were out for a walk, and I was alone in the house, sprawled on the couch. With nothing else to do, I tore open a bag of chips and started watching the recorded footage. The first recording was from 3 days ago. I paused. That was the day I landed in the U.S. The same day, Ava had called my old office, and I had Sarah tell her I was on a business trip. The apartment appeared on the screen, and it felt like I was looking into another lifetime. For a second, I wondered, was that really the home I had shared with her for 9 years? Almost no trace of me was left, except for the single-framed photo I'd left on the entryway table. A moment later, I heard the sound of the keypad lock. The face that appeared was painfully familiar. Ava. She was wearing a dress, looking as beautiful as a movie star. I shoved a handful of chips into my mouth. You can't watch a drama without snacks, after all. Then another person walked in. White shirt, same haircut as mine. It was Marco. I took a long drink of Coke. I guess he was the man of the house now. I had to admit, he was a handsome guy. When Ava first bought this place, she must have pictured him living here with her. I watched him on the screen for a long time. There was a subtle weakness in his eyes that even as a man, made me feel a strange urge to protect him. It was the complete opposite of me. I've always been decisive, relentless. People always said my gaze was too intense, that I could stare down anyone in a boardroom. How else would I have become the youngest regional executive director in the company's history? I grabbed another handful of chips, ketchup flavored, my favorite. On the screen, Ava led Marco into the living room. James is on a business trip for a few days, Ava was saying. I told him you're a mess after your breakup and needed someone to look after you. I said you'd stay here for a bit. He'll understand. She gestured for Marco to sit on the sofa and handed him a glass of water. He didn't take the glass. Instead, he reached up and wrapped his arm around her neck. I always thought you were just using him as my stand-in all these years. I stopped chewing. That's all in the past, Ava said, pulling a bottle of pills from her purse. The person I love now is James. Take your medicine and go to bed. But Marco yanked her down onto his lap. Ava, you just try and provoke me, he said. You want me to believe you haven't thought about me once all these years? Then why are you here with me instead of with him? Marco. Ava's voice was hoarse. Don't. I had to hand it to my past self. The audio on this security system was crystal clear. Don't what? Ava, he pressed. You want me, and I want you. Why else would you pick a guy who looks exactly like me? As he spoke, he pulled off his shirt, his toned muscles gleaming under the light. Ava finally broke. Soon, their heavy breathing filled the room. This was better than any soap opera. I glanced toward the front door, making sure my parents weren't back yet. Good, they were still out. So much for her principals. They were all over each other, kissing as they stumbled deeper into the apartment. I assumed they were heading for the bedroom, but they staggered into the study instead. Just as Marco was about to push her down onto the desk, she went completely rigid, as if frozen in time. His hands were still on her, but she shoved him away with surprising force. She strode through the living room and straight into the bedroom. With a loud slam, she slid open the doors of the built-in closet. My half was completely empty. Ava stepped closer and yanked out an article of clothing. A white shirt. She threw it on the bed. She pulled out another, also white. It landed next to the first. She kept pulling them out, one after another, and they were all white. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, but she didn't stop until my entire side of the closet was empty, the contents piled on the bed. James, what did you do? On the recording, her voice was laced with panic, her face flushed. I could almost feel the necklace I'd given her tightening around her throat. She ran out of the bedroom, ignoring Marco calling after her. Ava, what's wrong? She lunged for the coffee table and snatched her phone. The first message she sent was a voice note. James, what is this? Where did all the books go? What happened to your clothes? You said you were on a business trip. Answer me. She must have realized how frantic she sounded, because she immediately switched to text. They were the same messages I'd seen earlier on my old phone, sent in that very moment of panic. I got up and grabbed another bag of chips. Potato chips are, without a doubt, the perfect snack for watching a drama unfold. I tore open the bag and turned my attention back to the screen. James, there's really nothing going on with Marco. I admit we dated, but that's in the past. You're the only one I care about now. She had just sent that text when Marco finally lost his patience. Are we really in the past? He demanded. If we're in the past, why did you pick me up the second I landed? Why did you make that Facebook post about 9 years? When someone asked if you'd forgotten me, you replied yes. Ava, look at yourself. Does any of that sound like we're in the past? Ava sank onto the sofa, seemingly deaf to his words. I watched her on the screen, dialing my number over and over, only to be met with the automated message. The phone you're trying to reach has been turned off. When she didn't respond, Marco stopped pushing. He walked over and reached out to comfort her, but she flinched away. You should go, she said, her voice cold. I'll call you an Uber to the hotel. Marco was stunned. Ava, it's 2 a.m. You're kicking me out? She stood up, pulling her arm away from him and tapping at her phone. The car's on its way, she said. You have plenty of friends in the city. Go stay with one of them. Can't you see how much of a wreck I am right now? Yes, I have other friends, but you're the one I've always trusted most. He pleaded. I didn't just come back to see family. I came back for you, Ava. When you posted that picture, I knew you'd never really forgotten me. You need to be honest with yourself. We can't let this chance slip away again. Marco, Ava said, her voice deflating. Please just go. I can't lose James. He looks like you, but he isn't you. His eyes don't have your weakness. They have resolve. I got tired of your indecisiveness a long time ago. I don't want to lose James. Marco stood motionless, but Ava was already on her feet, dragging his suitcase to the door and pulling it open. James has seen my messages, she said. He'll be home soon. I don't want him to find you here. Marco hesitated, but seeing the cold resolve on her face, he finally gave in. He reluctantly grabbed his suitcase and left. Ava shut the door, glanced around the living room, and sank back onto the sofa. She was holding the last piece of me I'd left behind, the framed photo of us, and she sat there like that, clutching it for the rest of the night. Watching the lonely figure on the screen, I opened another Coke. Binge-watching a good drama really calls for popcorn, but I didn't have any. I settled for opening another bag of chips. The best part was yet to come, after all. Ava sat on that sofa all night. She didn't move until her secretary called the next morning. She went to her office for a meeting and came straight back home, still in yesterday's dress, and sat right back down in the same spot on the sofa. She sent me a voice note, a habit of hers. James, I went to your old office today. I threatened to pull all of Dakin's business if they didn't tell me where you were. That's when they told me. You weren't on a business trip. You quit, but they wouldn't tell me where you went. James, I guess you need some space. But when are you coming back? Can you please just send me one word, just so I know you're okay? Please stop being angry. I'm begging you, James. I'm so worried. When you said you had a fever, I should have taken you to the hospital right away. I was wrong. But Marco told me he was falling apart, that he had no one else, and that's why I went to him. I only did it because I knew you'd be okay. Can you forgive me? I stopped chewing for a second. I suddenly realized it didn't matter whether I forgave her or not. Only one thought echoed in my mind. Ava, do you even deserve it? On the screen, she remained on the sofa, her eyes glued to her phone. She snatched it up at every notification. There were work messages, and even more from Marco. She glanced at them, her expression growing more and more irritated. She slammed her phone face down on the coffee table and walked to the kitchen. She stood there for a long moment, as if only now realizing she was hungry. She opened the fridge and began to rummage through it. The moment she opened the refrigerator door, her expression changed. She carefully lifted something out. It was an entire ocean blue cake, decorated with whipped cream that looked like the crests of waves. The cake was stale, but she remembered it clearly. It represented an important promise between us. We had even sketched out the design together on a napkin, a sketch she later had framed and kept on her desk at work. She had dreamed so many times of having a child with me, a child who would have my determined eyes, my decisiveness. And then she thought of Marco, the man who looked so much like me. The first time she met me, she'd almost cried. She and her first love, Marco, had made a 10-year pact. If he was still single in 10 years, she would marry him. But Marco had stayed abroad, and they had slowly lost touch. On all those lonely nights she spent thinking of him, I was the one by her side. She had me wear white shirts, just like Marco. She had me cut my hair in his style. Back then, I looked just like him. But over time, she began to see that I was just me. I wasn't like Marco. I wasn't fragile or indecisive. I would never just drop everything and run away to another country. By the time the pandemic arrived, she no longer cared if I wore white shirts or how I cut my hair. I started growing my hair out. I'd lounge around the apartment in a pair of ridiculous black pajamas with teddy bears on them. And in those quiet, everyday moments, she saw something else behind my resolute exterior, a vulnerability, a dependence that I showed only to her. It was then that she truly started to want a child with me. She wanted to build a family with me, to start the next chapter of our lives. On our 9th anniversary, she had planned to propose. But that was the day Marco called. He told her he was heartbroken, that he didn't see the point in living anymore. Ava, he'd said, maybe you're the only one who can save me. She couldn't bring herself to tell me the truth, that he was her ex. She was afraid of how I'd react, but she couldn't just let him fall apart. So she invented an emergency at work and put her proposal on hold. She stayed with him at his hotel in a room with 2 beds. She slept in the one next to his. Many nights, he would wake up in a panic, talking about ending it all. She couldn't bring herself to leave his side, but she knew she couldn't avoid me forever. So, she decided to bring Marco to our apartment. She thought if I could just see the situation for myself, maybe I wouldn't be so angry. What she didn't expect was that by the time she brought him over, I was already gone. The crisis she felt then wasn't something a fight could fix. It was the chilling finality of me leaving for good. She panicked. She admitted to herself that she had almost crossed a line with Marco, almost made an irreversible mistake. But it was only when she saw the empty study, the half-empty closet, that she realized she was about to lose the most important thing in her life. It was a love built over 9 years. She knew it hadn't started from a pure place, but over time, it had been polished into something precious and real. She had pushed Marco away, but she felt as if she were plunging into an abyss. She sent me countless texts and voice notes. She called again and again. I hadn't blocked her number, and that, more than anything, terrified her. It meant I simply didn't care anymore. I didn't care if she was with Marco. I didn't care if she begged me to come back. I didn't care if she one day forgot my face. I had completely and utterly let go. Ava couldn't understand it. She spent night after night in that empty apartment, watching the sky turn from dark to light and back again. She couldn't wrap her head around it. How could a few days with Marco make me give up on her so completely, without leaving even a sliver of hope? And now, she was hungry. She'd barely eaten or slept in days. Her stomach was cramping in protest. She knew if she didn't eat something, she would collapse. But she couldn't collapse. Not yet. She still had things she needed to say to me. She would have taken any reply, even a single, angry word, as a sign of hope. She opened the refrigerator and saw the ocean blue cake. If we ever have a baby, I had said, the moment we find out, let's bake a cake to celebrate. Let's make it ocean blue, she had replied. I had a wild imagination. I'd grab a note card and sketched it out right then and there. Perfect, I'd said, adding the finishing touches. Our child should be like the ocean, born free, with a life as wide and full of possibilities as the sea itself. My eyes had been full of hope when I said it. We had stayed up all night talking, dreaming of this new life we would create together. It was that night that she had decided to propose to me. And now, here was the cake that symbolized that future, that child, sitting in the refrigerator. A cake I had apparently bought without her. Her hands were shaking as she lifted the cake out of the fridge. She sent me another text. James, you have no idea how much I want a child with you. Please, let's get married. Let's do everything we planned. Please, James, I'm begging you. Even a one-word reply would be better than this silence. She sent text after text, but each one disappeared into a void. She knew me too well. She knew this cake was my final, definitive statement on our shared dream of having a child. It was the end. She remembered the rainy night. I had a 104-degree fever and begged her to take me to the hospital. She remembered the text I sent, asking if we could just talk. The memories swirled in her head. She raised her hand and slapped herself hard across the face. Twice. The corner of her lip split, and she wiped away the blood. She felt no pain. But a moment later, a feverish heat washed over her, and her teeth began to chatter. She stared at the cake. She could no longer see the ocean, or freedom, or hope. All she saw was a tombstone. She felt like an executioner. She had killed the child we had both so desperately wanted. The powerful woman everyone at work called Ms. Thompson now sat at the dining table like a frail old woman, completely drained of life. She stared at the cake, as lifeless as a dead tree. Suddenly, she noticed a small piece of paper tucked beneath the cake. She slowly pulled it out. It was my handwriting, familiar and firm. Whatever happens, Ava, it read, when you see this, please light a candle for the child we never had. The words hit her, and her eyes burned. She tried to wipe the tears away, but they streamed through her fingers, unstoppable. She bit her lip, trying to hold it in, but it was no use. She broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. Her cries echoed in the empty apartment. The man named James would never hold her again. When she was struggling to climb the corporate ladder, I was the one who held her through the long, stressful nights. When her career finally took off, I was the one supporting her every step of the way. On the nights she cried over spreadsheets and KPIs, I was the one who stayed up with her, helping her rework her presentations. When she finally landed those big accounts and broke down in tears of joy, I was the first one to hold her, telling her she was brilliant, perfect. The memory made her heart ache. In my eyes, she had been perfect, and now she had destroyed it all. She cried until she was hoarse, until she had no strength left. The cake sat on the table, a silent monument to her foolishness, her hypocrisy. She found a lighter and a candle and stuck it in the center of the cake. She watched the flame flicker and die. Then she began to eat the cake, stuffing it into her mouth with her bare hands. It was stale. The frosting was waxy and bitter. It was disgusting. She forced it down handful by handful. When the entire cake was gone, her stomach revolted. She lurched to the side, grabbing the table for support, and threw up everything she had just eaten. A hot, coppery taste surged up her throat. Her vision went black, and she collapsed. The moment Ava started stuffing the cake in her mouth, I shut off the video feed. Once she lit the candle for our child that never was and began to eat like a woman possessed, any lingering desire I had to watch the spectacle vanished. Her tears, the blood on her lip, the swollen cheek for where she'd hit herself. To me, it was all just one thing. Her karma had finally caught up with her. I closed the app, powered down the old phone, and tossed it back in the drawer where it belonged. Then I went to my bedroom to get some sleep. I didn't believe for a second that a woman like Ava would ever truly take responsibility for her actions. She was young, wealthy, and beautiful. She'd have a breakdown for a few days, cry for a few nights, get blackout drunk with her friends. And before long, she'd be bringing other men home. Knowing her penchant for finding stand-ins, she'd probably even find another one who looked like me. The thought didn't surprise me in the slightest. With that cold thought, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I went back to my desk and started to write. The new environment was inspiring. My fingers flew across the keyboard, sentences pouring out of me. The long-lost feeling of being in the zone settled over me. Meanwhile, Ava was lying in a hospital bed, unable to believe she had actually coughed up blood and passed out. She had literally made herself sick from a broken heart. It turned out emotional pain could manifest into physical illness. Her thoughts returned to me. What if she could find me? What if she was sincere enough? Could she move me? Was there still a chance for us? Was this all just some cruel test I had devised? Clinging to these delusions, Ava checked out of the hospital and began searching for me as if possessed. What she didn't realize was that my parents had already blocked her number and all her social media accounts. Their house in Chicago was empty, cleared out completely. Perhaps I had planned this all along, to vanish from her life without a trace. Even their old neighbors had no idea where my family had gone. She had no way of contacting any of my other relatives. The one person who might have known something, Ethan, had already moved to Scandinavia and had been the first to cut all ties with her. I had truly, completely disconnected. Her last hope was my old company. But no matter how many times she called or showed up in person, the answer was always the same. Mr. Miller has resigned. We have no information regarding his current whereabouts. Because she kept causing scenes at the office, the board of directors decided she was damaging the company's image. They removed her from her position as executive director. Her reputation and her income fell off a cliff. Her network of contacts vanished overnight. The people who had once flocked around her disappeared as if they'd never existed. But Ava didn't care. She started pouring her money into private investigation firms, begging them to find any trace of me. The answer was always the same. James Miller was no longer in the country. But where had I gone? Ava spent her days like a ghost, haunting the city, chasing down phantom leads, and her nights drowning her sorrows in bars. Marco, to his credit, checked in on her almost daily. He even tried to reason with her. "You only chose James because he looked like me," he said one night. "So why can't you just be with me now?" Ava just laughed coldly and called him disgusting. But she knew, deep down, that she was the disgusting one. She continued her downward spiral, until one day, she finally sold our apartment. She moved into a small studio, unable to bear the sight of the place where she had destroyed everything. Her James, the man she was going to ask to marry her, the child they had dreamed of, the one who would have had my determined eyes. All of it was gone. Then, one day, she heard a rumor that I had moved to America. At first, she dismissed it. I had always said, as long as my parents are here, I'll never move too far away. It didn't make sense for me to leave the country. Until one day, she saw a book in a store window. The author's name was James Miller. And in that instant, she understood everything. I had gone into a field that required absolute secrecy. As part of my employment contract, I had to sever all ties with social media. If it hadn't been for this book published in the U.S., she would likely have never found me. By then, 10 years had passed since I'd left. She was finally seeing me again on the author photo of a book jacket. I looked more mature, my gaze even more resolute and captivating than she remembered. A surge of heat rushed through her. She went back to her apartment, took a long bath, and then went to a salon to have her hair and makeup done. She had kept her figure, but when she walked in, she looked like a mess. But after hours of work, the woman in the mirror was the woman she had been at 30, young, beautiful, and full of life. Her beauty had always felt like a gift. Her friends had told her for years that she was wasting it by not dating. In truth, she didn't understand it herself. Why her heart had remained fixed on me after all these years. Her sole obsession in life had become seeing me one last time, to tell me she still loved me, to admit how terribly she had treated me, and to say, one more time, I love you. On the flight to America, she read my book again from cover to cover. One detail in the author bio gave her a surge of hope. I was still unmarried. Maybe, she thought, he had been waiting for her all this time, waiting for her to come to him, so they could finally have that child, the one who would be as free as the ocean. Filled with this ecstatic hope, she rented a car at the Boston airport and drove to the address listed in the book. She stood on the porch and knocked. The door was opened by a smiling, blonde woman. Ava asked for me. The woman smiled brightly. Oh, today's his wedding. It's at the chapel on 3rd Street. I just came back to grab the rings. He was so nervous he forgot them. You can walk over with me if you'd like. The woman quickly locked the door, and they started across the manicured lawn toward the main road. People were emerging from the neighboring houses, dressed in their Sunday best. They're all heading to the wedding, too, the woman said cheerfully. She walked quickly, and Ava struggled to keep up, feeling unsteady with every step. When they reached the doors of the chapel, Ava stopped. Her feet felt rooted to the spot. You look more nervous than the groom, the woman laughed, ushering her toward the entrance. You must be a friend of his. Go on in and wish him well. He and his bride, Min, have been together for 9 years now. Doesn't 9 mean forever in your culture? The woman pushed open the heavy chapel doors, but Ava didn't move. From my spot at the altar, I saw the faces of my friends and family. And then, in the doorway, I saw a figure that looked vaguely familiar. I didn't give it a second thought as I walked over to my best man to get the rings. With the small boxes in my hand, my eyes went right back to my bride. Min, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer, brilliant and breathtakingly beautiful. The smile I gave her was filled with pure happiness. This was the woman who had been by my side for 9 years. It was all because when my book, Chaos, was published, I had insisted we get married that year. Min had readily agreed. That's so romantic, she laughed. Doesn't 9 mean forever in your culture? Darling, it's so beautifully complex. As I turned back toward the altar, rings in hand, I finally got a clear look at the woman in the doorway. It was Ava. A single thought drifted through my mind. She must be a tourist who wandered in by mistake. Out of a sense of politeness, I offered her a small, distant smile. Then I turned my full attention back to my wedding. The reunion she had rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times never came. There was no dramatic embrace, no tearful reconciliation in front of the crowd. There was only my polite, distant smile, a needle of ice that pierced her to the core. This entire journey across the world had been for me. Every detail of her appearance, every second she'd spent choosing her outfit, Every turbulent emotion she'd felt on the plane, it had all been for me. She had never imagined that just a year after I left, I'd already moved on, that I had started a new life without a moment's hesitation, without a single backward glance at the child we were supposed to have. In my life, Ava was nothing more than the past. And just like the look in my eyes, I only ever moved forward. I never looked back. The wedding march began. Ava stood in the doorway and watched as I and the radiant woman beside me exchanged our vows. "Do you, James, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked. "Edo, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part." "Edo." The officiant turned to Min. "And do you, Min, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She smiled. "Edo, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part." "Edo." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." As the chapel erupted in applause, as our friends and family cheered for us, no one noticed the woman named Ava slip away from the doorway. She walked in her expensive heels, each step heavy with utter despair, toward the blue expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The white-crested waves rolled onto the shore, one after another, like the memories she had clung to for a decade. She took off her shoes and set them neatly on the sand. Then she walked slowly into the water, step by step. "James," she whispered to the waves, "maybe in another life, we'll meet again. We'll get married. We'll have that child. We'll grow old together. I know I brought this all on myself, but I still can't wish you happiness, because my life's great love story ends with you." 3 days later, a woman's body washed ashore on a beach in Massachusetts, and I, the newlywed, knew nothing of it. The ocean had carried her far away. More importantly, I was immersed in my new life, my new happiness. The past was sealed away. All that mattered was the present. And for me, this moment was the only thing that was eternal. This story is not just the tragedy of stand-in, but a mirror reflecting our own hearts. Ava's mistake was living in the past, tried to use the present to pay off old debts, and in doing so, she bankrupted her future. My choice, while seemingly cruel, was in fact a clear-eyed act of self-preservation. My actions show that when a love is sustained only by resemblance, it has already lost all its value. True strength isn't winning a tug-of-war. It's having the courage to walk away from a rigged game. This story asks us to consider, in love, are we truly loving the person before us, or are we loving the reflection of an unfulfilled dream? May we all learn to give our whole hearts only to those who truly see us, not someone who is merely looking through us to see another. Because the right person is worth everything we have to give.